Hi, I'm Arlene McIntyre, Creative Director at Ventura Design, and you're listening to Shut the Front Door, a light-hearted podcast that will bring you through the front door and into the homes of influential and interesting people. Home for me is one of the most important things in my life. My career has fortunately given me the opportunity to work closely with people and to help them create a home they will cherish forever. Today on Shut the Front Door, we are joined by PJ Gibbons, editor and publisher of Social and Personal magazine, Ireland's most prestigious style and ruling fashion magazine. Originally from County Mayo, PJ was the youngest ever person to take the reins at a national magazine when he purchased the title in 2004. Since then, he has taken the publication from strength to strength and most recently added the title Social and Personal Weddings to their offering. Winner of Ireland's most influential magazine editor at the inaugural Most Influential in Irish Fashion Awards, we are delighted to be joined by PJ today. Welcome to Shut the Front Door, PJ. How are you?
Hi, Arlene. I'm good, thank you.
How's life in lockdown?
It's fine. A lot of people kind of, extol the parts they don't like about lockdown. I like the kind of relaxation part of it. An awful lot of people say to me, because of the magazine or what I do you not miss social? As in going out and going to events and launches and all the rest of it. And I actually don't. It was a nice break. This lockdown, I have to say, the third one now, is more difficult than the first one. I think the first one, it was all unusual for everybody. And now everybody kind of knows what to expect from a lockdown and have maybe got a bit less patience with it. But for me, it's not like, it's not a massive difference. There's nobody like in our office. Is about a 20-minute walk from where we live. So, and there's nobody else here. So I'm on my own rattling around the office every day, or days that I can get in. And aside from that, long walks and stuff. I miss not being able to go to the west of Ireland, which I used to every summer, and then I would go down for visits on weekends, once a month maybe. So I haven't been able to do that for a year now. And that's kind of the main change for me.
So, what part of the west are you from?
From a little town called Lewisburg, which is just west of Westport. I always describe it like that, as in west of Westport, because not an awful lot of people know where Lewisburg is, but it's right on the coast. And it's a small village. It's quaint and overrun by tourists usually in the summertime, but a beautiful spot like at any time of the year.
Yeah, God, hopefully you'll be getting back soon. It's just, I think they're coming out of the woods, hopefully this time. Hopefully by May we'll be in a much better place.
Yeah, and I think it's just to remain positive is the main thing as well. For it's kind of difficult to do some days, but you've got to get on with it and do it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'd love to start chatting with you, if I may, about your first memories of home. What were your first memories of growing up in the West?
Probably the weather. I know it's an Irish thing to say, and I know it's probably more West of Ireland thing to say, but the weather, I think, is what I remember the most. Because you live somewhere, you're ensconced in something for a huge part of your life, and other people tell you things about it. You kind of really don't know what they're talking about. Like, I used to understand when people would tell us who would come and visit the area, how beautiful it was, until I left and went back in later years. And then I understood, what they were talking about. But when you're living it and kind of there, you think of it in a different way. So home to me would have been kind of wild weather, summers, and it seemed miraculously that every time we would go back to school in September, the weather would get better. So your summer would have been constant rain. And I grew up in the farm, so there were always jobs to be done. So it was late in the evening, long summer evenings, when you'd come in, and get time to kind of, there wasn't really such a thing as playtime because you always had something to do. Yeah. So that was home life early on.
Wow. And what was your family home style like? Can you describe that to me?
The style of the house itself?
Yes.
It was a farmhouse, really. So, general Irish farmhouse, and it had kind of all the trappings that were with it. So it wasn't the kind of place that you would come in and kind of take off the shoes at the door. There was always mud everywhere, and not in the house itself, but I mean, it was a kind of a working farmhouse, as in you were in and out. Doing things, working all the time. Style-wise, quite. I grew up in the late 70s, early 80s, as in my school years. So it was of that period, of that time.
Yes, gotcha. And do you remember what posters you had on your teenage walls?
I had a fascination which died soon after with Star Wars. So it's Star Wars posters. No interest in it now, but I seem to have then, and I don't understand, the interest I had in it back then when I think about it now. But that was it. Oh, so God, it wasn't any movie stars or anything with Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. Star Wars was just huge, though. It wasn't everything those days. Yeah, I remember that too. Yeah,
and so fantastical as well. I suppose it was just so different, a different kind of world that completely different to anything else you knew, and so it was all that imaginary thing for a child, as opposed to anything else.
Yeah, what was it? May the force be with you. The famous line. Great. I used to love them too. It was such a big thing when I was growing up in the States. It was really big. So you're originally from Mayo. So what brought you from the west to the east?
College first, and so I studied communications, so media in general, print, broadcast, and media or journalism, and photography, and so I started freelancing for Irish newspapers like the Sunday Press and the Irish Press, which no longer exists. They all went defunct in 1994.
Okay.
I freelanced for them when I was in my last year in college, and that gave me a great experience because it was different to the kind of what you were learning in college. It was more practical and kind of get out there, and you had editors kind of scribbling on notes on what you'd written, and kind of giving you first hand of how to put a story together. And then in '94, I decided to go to the States. It was my idea was to go there for a summer. But I ended up staying longer, and that was 94, 95. And at one point, I traveled across the US, but my plan was not to go not to fly, because I wanted to see as much of America as possible. So I went by road, and it took me a while to get there, but I went coast to coast, and I ended up in LA. When I got there, it was January 95, and they were searching for jurors for the O.J. Simpson trial.
Oh my God.
I decided to go downtown one day. I was living at the time in Venice Beach, or was staying in Venice Beach. And I decided to go downtown to the courthouse to see what the lay of the land was, or whatever. It was just innocence. I was 21 years of age. So now I would think that I would never take a chance on doing it. But I thought, no harm in asking if I can kind of get in here, get access to where, this is going to take place, and see if I get some stories to send back to Dublin. And I met this press lady, and I'll never forget her name because she gave me such a chance. I think she was under the impression that I was a journalism student who had come all the way from Dublin just to see what this trial was all about. But she had confusion about that. I didn't kind of fill her in all the blanks.
Yes.
But her name was Jerry Ann Hazard, and she was looking after all the press for it. And she organised that I get a seat in the courtroom to share. I think I got a half day on a Wednesday, usually, but I was sharing with another journalist from New York. So it was kind of on rotation. But I did get in there, and I did kind of do stories around the whole media circus. So it was all around the nonsense that happened, really, and it could only be described as that. With, for example, Judge Ito would stop the trial if somebody famous came in, he would bring them back to his chambers to have a conversation, talk openly and freely with them about the trial, which was, loopy stuff.
Yeah.
So there were people like Barbara Walters and, high profile people who would come in just to see what was going on. And they'd be sitting in the public seats at the back, of which there were very few. So that was happening. The Heidi Fleiss trial happened the same year.
I can't believe it. That was also very profile.
It was. And the funny thing was, just like where I was in Venice Beach, just down the beach, like if I walked for about 20 minutes down the beach, you'd be in Santa Monica. And on 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica, Heidi Fleiss had a store, a lingerie store called Heidi Wear. So I went in there one day and she was actually there herself and the character. She used to go in and work there. So I got an interview with her one day. And then also that year, the Menendez brothers trial was on. Yeah. So it was kind of all happening that time. So it was the right place to be at the right time.
How exciting.
And at the end of that year, then I came back to Dublin and I've been here ever since.
Well, you're certainly not going to get profile cases like that in Dublin, for sure.
I think my days of court reporting are over.
Absolutely. Heidi Fleiss, I saw a documentary on her recently, and she's like somewhere in the shadows now looking after her bird collection.
Yeah. Because there was a lot of, she was supposed to have bought a farm somewhere in California, was it?
Yeah, Sacramento maybe, or somewhere like that.
Yeah. So I don't know what happened after that, but
so that definitely colored your kind of your background for sure.
Yeah, it did, and it was a great experience. It was, but it was also very eye-opening.
Yeah, for sure. So, what happened then? So you left California. Did you come back to Ireland, or did you travel more?
I came back at the end of 95, so kind of Christmas 1995, I came back to Dublin. And then when I came back, like it was actually kind of an intention to only stay a short while and then to go back to the States. But then in the mid-90s, I noticed Dublin was starting to change. It changed in the year and a half I've been away. And at this time, it was just changing for the better, and there was a lot more going on. So I felt a lot more positive about, career here and living here, and so I stayed.
Excellent. And then tell me when Social and Personal happened for you.
Yes, that happened in 2004. So 10 years later from the first time I went to the States. I was working for newspapers. I was covering entertainment and fashion and features and so on. And I was also doing a column for the previous publisher of Social and Personal, Nell Stewart Liberty. And it was one evening, I think, we had this conversation. We were at an event, and her then partner, who later became her husband, mentioned that Nell and he were intended to getting married. And basically at the end of the conversation kind of hinted at, like, would you be interested in taking over the magazine or buying it, from Nell? And it was kind of sprung out of that. And then 6-8 months later, I bought it. And then it was a process of kind of adapting it, slightly changing it, but I didn't want to change it overnight because, or the look of it or the content or anything else, because what would be the point? I mean, Social and Personal is around since 1934. Mm-hmm. And so it had a long, a lot of generations of readers, and it was its own kind of certain style. And if, I was going to radically change it overnight, it wouldn't have made sense. Like, I might as well start a new magazine. So I didn't do that. And then gradually over the following years, I did adapt and change it slightly from what it was.
Yeah. So, gosh, that must have been a really exciting challenge for you to take on.
It was. It was also very different because then I was on the kind of, the editing side, and I was on a different side to what I was used to. I was used to reporting to deadlines and reporting to editors, mm-hmm. And then I was on the other side completely. So it was different but fun and a challenge.
Definitely.
And I liked that. I liked the challenge.
Yeah, it sounds like you just always went big. It wasn't like
and it wasn't planned. It was like as if, oh God, you had all this charted out career plan. It wasn't at all. Absolutely not.
I know, but like you can't pass these opportunities by. You just have to go for it. Big time. So what magazines had inspired you up to that point? Was there anything that you always thought, gosh, I'd love to try this or do that? Or was there any kind of thing you felt you could add to social
magazines that really inspired me? Like, there was always only really one. There was always it was always Vanity Fair. That was the one that always kind of, I just thought, like, not just even writing for them, but I used to like, I have to say, like, slightly changed. It's changed editors a couple of times now since I started reading it first. And most recently, I wouldn't buy it as often as I used to, but back then it was kind of about that mix of kind of life. It was bringing life to you, like these stories about places and people that you wouldn't normally hear about, as well as everything else, as well as kind of, keeping on top of the now and what was happening and so on. So it was, while Social and Personal did it in a different context, in a smaller way because of Ireland, a tiny country, I kind of broadened that. Like, even back in the 40s and 50s, Social Person would have had correspondents in New York and Paris and, London. So it was getting that international element and flavor in there. I wanted to kind of, bring a little bit more of that into the title. And, obviously the fashion and beauty was always a part of it as well. So also because of kind of, I don't know, globalization and everything is kind of, the world has become a much smaller place. So Vanity Fair, would have been a big inspiration.
Yeah, it's a really lovely magazine. I like it too. And did you always have a passion for fashion?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. Even like, up until recently, like, people would ask me, who in fashion might have influenced me most. Like, there wasn't really anyone I can think of. It was something I kind of I grew to like and to know an awful lot more about and to educate myself on. But like, I remember back in the late 90s and early 2000s, I was covering London Fashion Week for the Irish Examiner every season, and it was then that I kind of started to kind of find out more about it or have developed more of an interest in it. But I used to I remember the first time I went to cover Fashion Week I used to look at these editors. I used to think they were crazy people. There would be a group, they'd be slightly older, they were older than me, but the way they were dressed I just found it very bizarre, because it could be like February and they'd be showing the autumn collections on the catwalk. The editors would arrive then, and they wouldn't be wearing anything that was that made any sense for the weather that was in London at that time. So they'd be dressed for they'd be wearing summer clothing, and some of them would be wearing what was kind of along the lines of collections that were being shown on the catwalk for the following autumn winter. Yes. And some of them would want to be way ahead, and they'd be wearing spring summer for the following year. So it just seemed like so mad and bizarre. Like, they always wanted to be kind of ahead of the fashion pack kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So and they were so kind of intense about the industry itself, that I think that's where it started, as in, like, I was kind of wondering what all this is about, like why this so fast, but it's just clothes, So yeah. I've changed my mind to that a little bit since then.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you rate Irish fashion design on a global scale?
Right up there, to be honest. We are, for the next issue, the March issue of Social and Personal, doing a focus on a look back at the legacy of Irish designer Sybil Connolly. And so she, might have gone out of a lot of people's minds at this stage. She was born 100 years ago in Waterford, Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And she became famous really in the 50s in the States for the pleated linen skirt and pleated linen dress. By the end of the 50s, she'd been on the cover, or her fashion had been on the cover of Time magazine. So she was our first kind of big Irish designer who was known internationally. We've had many since, but if I think about back in those days, covering Fashion Week in London at the end of the 90s, talking to designers like John Rocha and Paul Costello, and what they were doing, I know it wasn't they weren't, massive names in the States or in Australia or whatever, but in the UK they were huge. And what they were doing was showcasing Irish talent in design, on a scale that hadn't been before. I think certain designers have made massive impacts. Irish design has made a massive impact in fashion.
Good to hear. And Social and Personal has been around since 1934, but you probably still have all those old editions from the archives.
Yeah, and you know what, Arlene? One of the things that I was actually a bit upset about, what I did take over, was that the previous publishers were so lazy or disorganized that they didn't keep all those records, and they didn't file everything, and there was a lot of stuff that was kind of missing that I had to kind of look for or get elsewhere for years that were kind of in between that I know no examples of the work, or there was no file of anything as such, so there was no library put together of anything. So I started doing that then in 2004 and then on, because there was so much incredible content and photography, and there was lots of kind of that had been done over the previous decades that hadn't been put together or registered or collated in the library.
What a pity, because archiving all of that is the key. It's the key thing, really. Yeah, for sure. And it's like putting together a puzzle, really, for you, I'd imagine, trying to kind of.
I think it's hugely important to kind of look back on, or to, you can also refer back to it. That's been something I've been doing along the way since 2004. But it would have been easier if previous publishers had started to do it, or adapted a little bit. But it wasn't. I suppose when you're in that as well, when you're editing or publishing, you're so focused on the now and what you're doing right now that you don't kind of think about I need to have all this archived, or I need to do this or that, or maybe your plan is the long finger and just you never get around to it.
Yes, exactly. And do you find that even the magazine, what people are looking for in terms of what they're reading and what information is within each issue that goes out, it needs to be kind of in with the times? You have to kind of speak to people in that moment. Yeah, you do. And one of the most notable examples of that would be for us last summer, when COVID hit in March and everything was closed down here. For the next couple of months, I was working on a summer issue, summer 2020, and it was at that time that you have to kind of stop and think okay, this is a new clean slate now. So this issue, was starting from the beginning. I'll cut out kind of what would have been regular parts of it, or features of a general monthly, were kind of thrown out the window. So there was no social, there was no kind of culture to cover. There was a lot of things that were gone. And then the focus was on what's relevant now and what happens now, and what
is a reader sitting at home going to want to read about or know about. So it was a refocus on all those things that were more important and mattered in the moment more. And that's what we did for the July-August issue last year, because, it was really needed to have your finger on the pulse for, what was happening.
Definitely. And I'd imagine like photographing shoots and stuff, all of that.
Oh, yeah.
Changed.
Yeah. Yeah. There was so much cancelled, and, you losses back, right, because you might have stuff pre-planned, you might have pre-booked, and you might have half done a shoot. We'd done all of the above. We'd done lots of things, commissioned lots of stuff, and the majority of it all went by the wayside. So you start again, and you kind of do what you can. Like I remember for just before Christmas, when everything was freed up, when we got our free rein before the government shut everything down again, after Christmas, we had planned to shoot a beauty editorial, and just in terms of timing, it was to be shot just after Christmas, but I mean, we couldn't go ahead with that then because the lockdown happened, so all the organisation that will go into something like that had to be kind of now it's a difficult thing to do because you can't really plan too far down the line. So if I decide today, I would like to shoot this or do this fashion editorial or do this beauty editorial, we'll do it in 2 weeks' time and do this, do that, and whatever, and have these, this crew of people like models and makeup artists and everybody on standby waiting for it. And if something happened, like as in the lockdown we're in right now, if some decision was made back into level 5 or whatever it is, that's all gone out the window because you can't do it then. So that's pretty much what happened before Christmas. So now it's kind of like tenterhooks. Really, it's kind of you go each day really as you go along, not even each week. You can't think too far ahead, or you can't plan too far ahead because it could all change.
Yeah, for sure. I was reading a piece, you might have seen it as well, that the Guardian wrote about the 10 different kind of Vogue covers from across the world during the pandemic. Did you see that?
Oh, yeah.
It was really interesting. And they were just talking about how, like, just from across the world, some created kind of CGIs for the front cover because they couldn't do a photo shoot, or illustrations, or they used archive photographs.
Yeah.
For the 10
and
covers.
that's pretty much it. You limit it to, well, it's also good in the sense of creativity because it does give you kind of a push to be creative and to come up with something different because but then also you have to think about your reader and obviously on another side you need to think about your advertisers because you have to keep all those elements in mind because you don't want to put something that that is not going to hit the pulse correctly for the reader, that's going to turn them off or say like, how could they put how could they do a cover like that or whatever. And then you got to be mindful of, sacrifices people are making as well, like all frontline workers. How that you're respectful to what's happening, that it's a changed world. So you've got lots of elements that you have to keep in mind that you're what you're doing right, but you're doing tastefully as well and creatively, and you're checking all the boxes. And there's a lot of boxes to be ticked when it comes to all that.
Yeah, it's super case sensitive. I can't even imagine trying to organize a cover, and just that list must be really dangerous because you're just to make sure everyone's happy.
And you try and keep all that in your head and just kind of figure all that as you're going along, but you've all these elements fighting at you.
Yeah, absolutely. But like even like in terms of what people are wearing now, I'm sure you're seeing a lot of this now with kind of loungewear.
I think it was Victoria Beckham that said at her showcase of Spring Summer 21 collection last September in London that she was like all sticking with off glamour, no elasticated waistbands. But I think the elasticated waistbands have come in for everyone.
Oh yeah.
It's now obviously there's a huge stronger emphasis on comfort. I also think that there's been a refocus a bit on sustainability, that people are more conscious of, not, well, I suppose also because they haven't had the access to fast fashion, as in, those stores over the last while, because they've been closed mostly. But there's also rethink about, the bigger picture and the planet and, sustainability and all that. And I think that's really important. But for, like, in terms of trends, I mean, every time you look at it, especially spring and summer seasons, you're always looking at something that was before. Like at the moment, it's kind of refocused on the 90s. And also, if you look at a lot of collections, there's a huge influence from the 1980s. So, anything that you have from back then, just keep in your wardrobe, because it's going to come back in fashion again.
That's really down to certain hairstyles as well. I think the long roots and your hair kind of tied up on the top of your head is
get the leg warmers out and the heated rollers, and you're fine.
That Jane Fonda workout look.
Ready to go. Yeah, exactly.
Ready to go. And do you ever see a surge in high-end fashion pieces being bought once we get back to normal life? Do you think that'll ever happen, or happen quickly?
But I think like the design houses who do haute couture collections have even rethought the way they do those, and had to, because, well, also they have to think about, like, their clients who would pay thousands, tens of thousands on an outfit, had nowhere to go in this outfit. So they're not going to buy it and just walk around the bedroom looking at themselves in the mirror. I think for regular general ready-to-wear designer collections, yes, like I would assume the designers over the last couple of seasons, like as in since the beginning of last year, would have had to rethink everything anyway, and they can't afford to produce huge collections now because they're not being sold, because people, like, if you want to buy something that's outrageously expensive, you're not just going to. A lot of people, will still buy online, but for the most part, they're not going to be buying in huge numbers like that. An outfit that's going to cost a lot of money. They, want to touch the fabric, they want to try it on, and so on. It's an experience. If you're going to spend that much money on fashion, you want to have the experience as well. So I think a lot of them had to cut down, or the majority of them cut down their collections, as in the sheer volume of them. Also, I think the Fashion Week idea was dying anyway, and probably will phase out over the next short while. And this whole idea of virtual fashion shows makes much more sense. But I think high-end designer, ready-to-wear designer is not going anywhere. It's just going to be less of, like, I think it's going to be an idea to buy less but buy better. I think that's what people are going to look more towards now.
Yep, definitely. I think I'm definitely that person that I would buy less but buy better and more careful. And, like, where am I going to wear all these things anyway? There's a lot of that. And getting Zoom ready seems to be the new kind of buzzword. The beauty industry seems to have held on well. I think they're doing okay. They
are, except hair has been pretty much decimated. Like, it's very difficult for hairdressers and for like all salons, salon groups and individual salons. For like over the last year, they've been open, close again, and beauty industry in general. From what I've heard, like, the sales of beauty online have been massive over the last year, and probably also because there's been a lot more time to think about it, and for women to find out what's out there and put more time and thought into it. But it has been quite a boom for the beauty industry, as far as I know, for the last year.
Yeah, definitely. And taking care of yourself and beauty, health, kind of skincare, all that kind of stuff seems like that's just thriving.
Yeah, wellness and
wellness. Exactly. But then the other side is, the alcohol the sales have spiked as well. So
so it's all a balance, really, isn't it? Because it would be easy to fall into that. If you're on lockdown, you go like, sure, this is another glass of wine. But you have to You have to control yourself and stop somewhere and like just, get out there and walk and do something other than that for your mental health, because that's a serious part of it. Like, it can be so damaged. If you're, not only are you isolated from people, and then you don't want to end up having to turn to, a bottle and it lasts for respite. Mental health, I think, is just a huge, concern that people are looking after themselves, that they should, that, there's, one hopes not going to be enough, too much of a demand for help after all this is over. But I think I heard somewhere in the news the other day about the younger generation, this is going to have a massive effect on their mental health.
Yeah, it is. You can see it. You can definitely see it. It's really sad for a lot of people. And it's also very sad for a lot of weddings. That wedding industry has just gone down.
Yes, it has. And they can't plan ahead. And that's the difficult part as well. Like I was saying to you earlier, about planning shoots and so on, or editorial shoots for brides to be and the grooms to be. They can't plan too far ahead unless they're like, let's do a big wedding, but I need to plan for 2025 just in case, just to be sure that we're not going to be still in the middle of this pandemic. Because even for last year when people were saying, oh yeah, granted they were planning for later in 2020, but even looking to 2021, I mean, that was probably a bit too close as well, as in plans could change again.
And it's a big day, there's a lot of money that goes into it. So, yeah.
Right. And lots of couples have changed dates 3 or 4 times. So that's like a regular thing that they've changed that many times, because it's so difficult to plan that far ahead, unless you want to kind of do a guaranteed wedding for 10, 15 guests. But who wants to do that? Like if,
true. This is true.
Unless you really don't like people.
Yeah, exactly.
And you say, fine, I don't want to go to a wedding.
Unless you can have a massive outdoor wedding somewhere in the west of Ireland and be 2 meters
out on one of the islands. Fabulous.
Oh, that's an idea. There's a good idea. Yeah. So I suppose people will be thinking outside of the box how to have kind of, weddings that they know they can go ahead with next year.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, because because I don't know how, also there would have been, not just here in Ireland, but I mean, there's so many weddings take place in Ireland every year, but I mean, those couples who decide to get married abroad, obviously, they can't plan that either, because now it depends on, there's there's a lot more factors that come into it with the whole travel and, what country they're going to and how it would work over there. And what numbers, they can invite. It's really up in the air, but it's not going to stop anything. I know there was, they were talking about it there, Valentine's yesterday, about couples who were the jewelry stores are selling even more, I think, engagement rings than they were before, before the pandemic started. So it's not slowed down. People are still proposing, which is good. I mean, it's what he wants.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I suppose they have more disposable income, and they're thinking, well, hey, let's treat ourselves to this, that, and the other. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So there will be a slew of weddings on the way.
There sure will. That's good. Yeah. And and then the hospitality, is impacted by the weddings. It just keeps going.
Yeah, it's been a very difficult year for restaurants, hotels, and bars. I mean, the wet bars, pretty much closed for a year. It's very, very difficult for all those. How you come back from all that, and and the longer it goes on, the more in people's psyche, how much is that going to change? Where they think, oh, now I'm used to going home on a Friday or being at home on a Friday evening and having a glass of wine after dinner, or chilling out, watching some box set or something on Netflix. And I'm not going to bother doing the whole pub thing anymore, or, we don't need to go to a restaurant that I can cook in. I'm now a cordon bleu chef because of the past year and my online courses. So, it's not going to change massively. Obviously, people are going to want to get back out again, but it might have some impact.
Yeah, it'll take time.
Very difficult, for hospitality.
Yeah, it will take a long time before people feel really comfortable, I guess. That's for sure. And what's the biggest purchase you've ever made during the pandemic?
It's a bit of a sad story. No, it's not a sad story. It's a bit sad for me, as in people are going to think I'm sad for doing it. But the biggest purchase was not really a purchase, something I saw. It was a commission of a little dog, a little pug zoo. He's a mix of a pug and a shih tzu. And he's not into gesture. He's a Valentine's dog. And so I had this photograph. I saw this artist on Merrion Square, and he had these watercolors of animals like donkey and various other animals. And
love it.
I said, they look great. Would you do something from a photograph if I gave you a photograph? And he said, yeah. It's an animal now, isn't it? And I said, yeah, it's an animal. And I said, why? And he said, I don't do people. And I said, okay, Grant, it is an animal. It's dog. And he said, okay, I could do that. I could take a look at it for you. So he did. And he did this great portrait. So that cost a few quid, but it was, it's beautiful. And I know it's cruel, like people are going to think I'm insane.
Not at all. Not at all. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, he's a spoiled little pooch. And the portrait is great, but he didn't get any notice of it. He just wants more food and go for a walk. And that's it.
That is fabulous. I love it. I've had a watercolor portrait done of my two little Bijons. So hey, I'm all in. I love all that sort of stuff.
Oh, good. I don't feel it's a bad now. That's good.
Yeah, no, I have totally. And I did it with my two previous animals as well. My two Bijons previous to that, I got a portrait done. I think it's great fun. And it always just gives me a chuckle when I see them in the office, the framed portrait.
Yeah, it does. And that's what the artist actually said to me. He said, because I bought the other one I saw of him, of the donkey, and I got him to do this one of the dog, of Rudy. And he said, when you look at them, they'll just put a smile on your face, and who wants anything else? And he was so right, like they do every time I look at them.
I know. I was watching something on Netflix the other day about this society wedding in New York of two dogs.
Oh, really?
I'll send you on the link. It is it's actually hilarious, but very serious.
I'd love to see that. Now, that's the kind of wedding you could have 10 people at.
Oh, they had 300 people, and they had fabulous. Like we're talking high society of New York ladies.
Wow.
And, I think Toast was wearing a Marchesa tulle dress, and Finn had a top hat and tails, and it was all out.
Oh my God! Oh, I definitely want to see that.
And it was more fascinating, the people that were at it more than anything else. The dogs had no idea what was going on, but it was hilarious. Yes, I'll send you the link. Very entertaining.
What do you buy, Dog Bride? I'd love to see that.
Oh, I will. It's just very entertaining. I don't know what was more entertaining, the dogs dressed up as they were, or the people that dressed up the dogs as they were. It was just incredible. But
the whole thing is fabulous. Yeah, I love the whole idea.
Yeah, cool. And it was just the whole the way that set are, and how they really have. That's how they spend their time. Really, is kind of this would be an ordinary day for them.
Yeah, it is. Dogs are the babies.
100%, especially in New York.
Yeah.
So what inspires or drives the content in each of your monthly issues?
It's a mix, really. Like, in terms of, like, fashion is fashion. So fashion follows the trends, and kind of looks ahead to the next trend, as opposed to, like, what's happening right now. Beauty is the same. And then aside from that, features, really about kind of what's going on, kind of a big court case in New York, or a scandal in Australia, or some also stories about people, and we like to have that Irish link. So whether they're Irish or of Irish ancestry is important at one level, and Otherwise, just newsy and up to the moment, like could be in November, we had a couple of interviews with some of the stars of The Crown. So it's kind of to reflect what's happening at the moment and what's going on. So that was obviously the return of, I think it was the third season of The Crown was released at the end of November. So that was happening then. And then we looked ahead, like at the moment, the big talk, I think, online about anything streaming is the Britney story, which was done by the New York Times. And there are a couple of kind of different things along those lines. And then I'd say it's kind of a reflection of what's happening in society at the moment. So, so that's kind of where the focus is, and it's just kind of brainstorming. And then also what it can come down to, like who we can commission to, might be to write the story. Nobody can travel anymore, so you can't send anybody anywhere. And then in terms of photography, you have to look at that side of it as well. And, what access you have to what photographers or archive photography or whatever it might be. So, there are lots of elements that all tie into it. And there's a theme of an issue as well. So that kind of gives you a grounding or a basis to something. Like, for example, the March issue of Social and Personal is the spring-summer fashion issue. So it'll have a lot of fashion content, like, it could have interviews with designers, it will have interviews with designers, as well as showcasing the fashion trends. But there are other. It doesn't mean that everything else is sacrificed. That absolutely everything in that issue is fashion. It adapts and it brings in other areas as well. So it's not just that, but you do work from themes. Like we'll have an interior special then in the April issue. So so it changes up each month. So you kind of know in advance what you need to work towards.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got your targets. And who's been your all-time favorite person to interview ever?
God, there've been quite a few. Well, the one that I had so much fun with was one of the original supermodels, Linda Evangelista.
Oh, she was stunning.
Beautiful. And she was in Dublin in the, must be early to mid 2000s.
Yeah.
And she was just so much fun. Like, we did the interview in the Clarence Hotel, and then afterwards there's some kind of launch or event party that evening that she attended as well. And she just kind of seemed like a couple of times during the evening, because we'd met her earlier in the day. We were speaking during the evening, and she was kind of a lot kind of freer than I thought, than some celebrities usually are, because they usually have people around them that kind of, corner them into a corner and just don't let them talk to anyone. And she was almost like all evening, can we just basically get out of this place, and like there must be other fun places in Dublin. So I'm bored of all these parties and events and whatever. So she was memorable in the sense of like, a totally relaxed celebrity. For something that made an impact, I would be thinking along the lines of Christina Noble, the children's campaigner, charity, that she runs the Christine Noble Children's Foundation. I went on a trip with her to Mongolia once, and saw the work that she was doing over there. And like when you see it on the ground and you kind of there firsthand, it's totally different. And just like I would have a huge amount of respect for her for what she does. So it shows the kind of different side of life. So it's not all the glitz and glam that might leave an impact. It's kind of, what's happening in the real world is, just as probably more impactful than anything else.
And what was she like as a person?
Christina?
Yes.
Oh, great fun. Like just really bold, to be honest. Like she would always want to see the fun element in what she was like, despite having to deal with the most, awful situations with children and the situations they found themselves in. And she was like, we went to this place, we were out in the Gobi Desert. We drove for like 4 hours, 5 hours. And the first place we stopped in, this little village, she had lots of like clothes and food hampers and stuff to help these people, but she went around at some point. She said, "Oh, you have to let me go on my own here now to do this. So you stay in the jeep." She went off and she came back and said, "What are we doing?" She went around to each of the kind of the mothers of the different houses. The little gears is what they're called, that they live in. And they look like, for all the world, a teepee. That's what their homes look like. And so she went around to the mothers and just gave cash, like just money. And she said, like, it's the most important thing for these women to have that independence and to know that, like, we can send, all the clothes and food that they want, but it's kind of, a cash in hand. That's really important. So she said, any money we raise, this is what I do in a different way. She said, it's probably not what, any other charity does, but I think it's important to give them actual money so they can kind of look after themselves and do what they need to for their family. So yeah, she was that's the kind of person she was,
She sounds incredible.
Yeah.
She really does.
Really inspiring person.
Very, very. And do you thrive on deadlines, PJ? Are you a very organized person?
Well, I'm used to it from my newspaper days. So, yeah, I do. You know what I found in the very beginning when I did switch over to this role was that I thought, God, I've all the leisure time in the world. I have a whole month to get a magazine out. I used to have like an hour deadline or, a daily deadline.
I know.
And I used to think like, oh, you're fine, yeah, grand, loads of time. But yeah, it is quite different to that pressure of an hourly deadline or a daily deadline or whatever. Going back to the OJ trial that we were talking about earlier, I remember the press room in that courthouse on the third floor, where all these reports from all these news and TV stations across America were all stationed. And they used to be they were actually like this. Like if you walked around, like say you had to get out of the room, if you walked around the desk or whatever, they'd be hunkering over the computer, trying to cover with their arms and shawls or whatever they could so that you couldn't see the story on the screen. Like you could read something like passing by in a split second, pick up the gist of what they were trying to say. It was because one of them said afterwards, yeah, it is probably a bit intense, but it's because we're on hourly deadlines and we all have to have a different story. Like everybody can't run with the same thing. Nobody's going to, be interested in that. We all have to have a different angle. So, So that hourly deadline and daily deadline is it's a lot more pressured. With monthly, yes, we do deadlines, but if you're working in advance and like I was saying to you about themed issues, you can kind of know what you've got coming down the track, so you can work towards that as well. So you got something planned or in the plan 6 months before an issue runs.
Yes, gosh. And what was your opinion of the whole press office situation with Donald Trump at the time? Did you think that was just fascinating?
Oh, disaster. Yeah, no, I think it was really bad. It was also, I think, in my opinion, about control for him. Like he had no interest in it was that was why he was saying all this fake news, everything was fake news, is because he had no respect or interest. Like, no respect for prestigious news channels like CNN. And he wouldn't allow them access. So everything they were saying or broadcasting was fake news because he didn't agree with it, or because, he just couldn't be bothered. If there wasn't along the lines of what he wanted out there, he just didn't care. He just ignored it or called it out as fake news. And in the press room, I think probably he looked on all the journalists like he despised them. So if you don't have that respect in the beginning, for these people and their jobs who are just getting on with the job, I might ask you a million questions to back you into a corner to say something you might want to say, but at the end of the day, they're just doing their job. And he didn't have any respect at all for that. So he'd rather if there was no press accountability at all. I think that's the way that press room worked. I think it was disaster. The press spokespeople for the president were particularly bad about the way they dealt with the press.
Yes, it was a mess. It was a total mess. But do you think he'll make a comeback, or any of his family members will come back?
Yeah, well, it's a bit frightening now because the impeachment, the trial that just happened, because he was acquitted. So he. Like if he had been convicted, he wouldn't be able to come back or to run again in 4 years' time. But now he can, and it'll either be like him, or I would definitely say to watch Ivanka. I would say she will probably throw her hat in the ring for something politically.
Yeah, I did read something there in Vanity Fair that she is already being primed for that.
Yeah, I would imagine that. I think she's the golden child anyway. So if any of those supporters, if himself says enough to them about Ivanka is the one to look at now, because I won't be running next time, which he won't say for a while. That she might get the support.
So tell me about, like, when you're at home and you're relaxing in the evenings, how do you relax after like a busy week in the office with social and personal? How do you unwind?
I read a lot of the time. I do watch, I watch very little news. I will watch the news kind of at the beginning of the week, the end of the week, for about 15 minutes. That's all. I don't go into the news the rest of the week. To relax, I'm reading Dante's not just the Inferno, the Divine Comedy at the moment. So I'm kind of almost through that, and that's very heavy. Well, it's a lot heavier than I thought it would be when I got into it first. So I get kind of lost in reading. I chill out we've got a sunroom at the back of the house, which in winter isn't. You have to have the heaters on blasting all around you because it can be so cold. But it's a nice airy room. It's lots of light coming in, and I chill out there on the couch, just read, or alternate days I might have, like if it's the weekend, I might have something I'm following on Netflix or one of the streaming channels, and watch that for a while. So it kind of fits between the two, and then in between all that, walks on Sandymount Strand with Richard and Rudy. And that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Sounds blissful, actually.
Yeah.
And how does social media fit into your life?
Do you know what? It fits into my work. It doesn't fit into my private life. It doesn't fit into my personal life. I'm not mad about social media, to be honest, at all. I'm not on Facebook, and I don't have any intention to be on Facebook. The magazine is, obviously. I was on Instagram for a little while myself, and I'm not anymore, because I'm just not as fascinated as some people are by what they had for breakfast and lunch and dinner, what they're going to wear at the weekend, and where they were, and this gorgeous cup of coffee and whatever. Like, it's lovely and joyous, but I don't really, I'm not as fascinated by that.
Exactly, your headspace is somewhere else. Yeah.
So social media isn't like a part of my life really privately. For work it is, but that's separate.
And what one piece in your home holds the most special memories for you?
Well, do you know what? Now I'm going to say that portrait of Rudy the dog.
Oh wow! He's going to go to the fireplace.
Yeah, it's in the dining room. Actually, I know it sounds like probably a weird place for it, but you go through the dining room to get to the sunroom, and so the doors of the sunroom it's right beside there. So and I've got a library bookcase right beside it, so that's where he is, and it's kind of in a place where I want to put it where I can see it all the time. So, like, most of the time you'd spend, as we do, as I think loads of people do, spend most of the time in the kitchen. So, that room and the sunroom where I spend most of my time. And if I look through the kitchen, I can see it on the wall. And as I go through the sunroom, there it is. So I don't know if that's an item that you can actually say that you love the most in your home. But
of course it is. Absolutely.
That's on the couch. I love the couch as well.
Yeah, sofas are really important. Your bed, your sofa, and then, of course, Rudy, the portrait of Rudy. Sounds good. And what part of the whole writing process do you enjoy the most? Is it the writing or the researching, or what part of the whole process?
The researching, actually, probably more so. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the researching, I think, because the writing is, it's good. You're in a different zone for that. But I think the researching is fun because the good part is that it can lead you into other areas or other things or other parts of a story. Even if it's the same story, it might not be the same story. It might lead you into other things about another story. Say, for example, you're researching a feature about a person or, an event or something that happened. That would kind of lead you into lots of other things. So that would be kind of my favorite part, and obviously the part that you spend the most time doing, because you want to do it thoroughly, so it's going to take you a long time, and the same with images. If you're searching images for, for a story or for whatever it might be, you can just get lost in the process, and you can spend hours, which I've done.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, totally. Do you prefer people or places?
It's an awful thing to say, but I prefer places.
I don't think it's an awful thing to say. I was just curious. That's interesting. And what have you learned about yourself during the lockdown?
I've tried to change and learned and tried to change a little bit is to have more patience, because I can get very impatient about things. That's it. Like on a personal level, nothing is not like I ever had, not taking time out to consider things or to, think about things or live this insanely fast pace of life, which everybody was doing pre-pandemic. I was not to a huge extent because I did take kind of time out, so that when the first lockdown happened, that it wasn't this total introvert thing of oh God, you need to spend more time and take care of this or take care of that, or whatever, that you haven't stopped to think about for. I was kind of doing that anyway. So it's other things that I've noticed that that you can kind of take, for granted, or things that you might have not have, put time into looking deeper at. And one of them would be the whole idea of, just getting impatient. So
yeah,
I'm learning that.
So you're learning to slow down and to kind of stop the roses a bit.
Yeah. And I've definitely, I think everybody slowed down. And that's a good thing. You can live life too quickly besides, and just, you're living for, it's like people go to concerts and which I don't understand, and they film everything, they're looking at everything through their camera or their phone, and what's the point? You're not in the moment. So I don't like that. That wouldn't be me. I wouldn't get that whole thing. I wouldn't even understand it. Going to a concert and doing that. You may as well just stay at home and watch on a device.
Exactly. Be present.
So yeah, you've been in the present. That's it.
Yeah, nice one. And where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Hopefully here still. Probably still editing the magazine. I assume if I don't get rid of myself before then. I'm not sure. I haven't even thought that far down the line. When I started as editor in 2004, if you asked me then, I wouldn't have thought 10 years later I would still be doing that job, this job. And now it's, what is it, 16 years later? Yeah. I am. Yeah.
Wow.
So possibly still here. I'll just say still here.
You just never know. From the sounds of things, your life just throws really great big surprises at you. So
yeah, I'll keep you updated on that. Something else might happen.
With PJ Gibbons. And my last question for you is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Advice, let's see. I don't know. Looking back now, I would, if I was to look back and if my younger self asked me, what's going to store for me, what's going to happen, or is it good or bad, or should I do this or should I do that? I would just I would just look back at my younger self and say, enjoy it and don't change a thing. Because I wouldn't. Like, I look back and I wouldn't. Like, there's nothing I can think of that I would change. There's been, that's to say, and to point out that, like, not everything is good in a bed of roses. Like, there were lots of things awful things that happen along the way in a person's life as well. And there are a lot of, not good things that happened to me and for me. In all those years, the good with the bad, I wouldn't change anything, and I would just enjoy it. One piece of advice I have this little kind of like silver plaque thing that's up to my desk in the office, and it's a quote, and I have no idea where I got it from or who gave it to me. Just absolutely no memory of who gave it to me. Mm-hmm. And honestly, there's a quote from Winston Churchill which says, never, never, never give up. And that, I think, would be a sterling piece of advice that, I would give to my younger self, to say, never, never, never give up.
I love that. That's fantastic. I love it. I know that quote and I love it.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to ask you what's called a quick fire round of questions. Are you ready?
Yeah. Okay. I'm ready.
Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Text or talk?
Talk.
Red or white wine?
Red.
Home or abroad?
Abroad.
Fashion or interiors?
Interiors.
Online or in-store shopping?
In-store.
Taxi or walk?
Walk.
Half glass empty or half glass full?
Half glass full.
Early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
Glossy magazines or digital?
Glossy magazines.
Social or personal?
Personal.
And my final question, 2021 or 2022?
I'm like a challenge. 2021.
Excellent. Thank you so much for doing it.
It's been a pleasure, Arlene. Thank you.
You're such an interesting guy. And thank you so much for taking the time out to chat with me today.
Thank you.